Hey everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad Gustafson and I share two books that we love and we think you should read when, Brad?
Love the nail polish, Jen, and you should read them right now.
I love it. I love it. What you been reading this week, my friend?
I got a good one. So I joined this thing called the Principals Clubhouse, and where we have kind of a featured book each month. So that's where, if you're wondering, like, wow, Brad's really upped his book game lately. I confess that's kind of part of where that's coming from. So this month's featured title kind of goes with, what is it, August? Yeah, sorry. We're flipping over to September soon, but we're setting up for September to kind of go along with some of the celebrations in that month. So the book is Paletero Man. I hope I'm saying that right. And I love so many things about this story, but it reminds me, it was written kind of with the vibrant community of Los Angeles, California in mind, I think. And it's funny because I didn't learn that until after I read it. But as I was reading it, I was just thinking about the people and the stories and the, some of the vendors and the relationships of this boy who's walking to get to as the title implies, the Paletero Man. And it was so cool. And there's actually a podcast I listen to on a regular basis that's out of California. And so I feel this strange connection, even though I shouldn't really feel a connection to some of the vibrant communities there. But the reason that I'm recommending this, partly because of the cultural connections, just how vibrant and awesome it was as you look at some of these pictures. Sorry, I'm enjoying the pictures without showing them. That's my rookiness. Jen's like, are you going to show us? Yes, I am.
I figured you were just building suspense.
yeah. That's what I'm doing. It just brings me back like viscerally to my childhood. And for me, it was like the ice cream man. It was so a vendor on wheels. But as you just look at the community and how they're enjoying, as it happens to be, I'm going to call it ice cream, even though it might not exactly be ice cream. And just really how a lot of the pictures and images jump off the screen. And then even on the dust jacket reveal.
Yeah. Oh, neat.
Like almost looking at the side of the ice cream truck and making my selection. And even I can just picture what's in the middle of these and what they tasted like all of those visceral reasons. It's a book that I want to recommend. It's also very fun to read. And as the story goes, this kiddo's running to get to the Paletero Man because he loves Paleteros, and he gets there he runs through the whole city and passes by several other vendors and they're greeting him. He gets to his destination. He doesn't have any money, realizes it all fell out as he was running.
Oh no.
So some of the other vendors catch up and they're like, hey, you didn't hear us calling. Your change was literally falling out of your pocket. So they gave him his money, and then the Paletero Man, I guess it's spoiler alert. I apologize. I know you're not necessarily supposed to do this on book talks, but the Paletero Man does something cool in honor of the community and stuff. So that, before I do like the grand finale, read this now thing, somebody forwarded me the Paletero Man song, and
my goodness.
So I'm like, what? There's a song. This goes under the category of, I didn't even realize this was on the dust I can't say it, dust cover.
Yeah.
Listen to the song. There we go. So I'm going to play like 10 seconds of it because it's so cool and you probably won't get it out of your head. So there's the.
How fun!
So you can hear kind of the bell in the background and stuff. And then when you read about the authors, they're clearly, in addition to being great writers and illustrators, they're very musically inclined. So this book is a collision of passion and culture and music and story and ice cream, and who couldn't love that? So for all those reasons, I would say you should probably read this right now.
Oh, how fun. I love it. It looks wonderful. That book has not been on my radar, so thank you for putting it on there.
Yeah, you bet. So what do you have, Jen? And does it have a song?
It does not have a song, although there's music mentioned in the book. It doesn't have its own song yet. Maybe we'll have to work on that. But I can't think of, you know how every week I usually am able to come up with some kind of connection between our two books, because usually they end up related in some way, right? Not even going to try this week because my book is such a hard left turn from yours. There's
Okay.
just no way to like make a connection apart from the fact that they both, I think, are great books that people should read right now, right?
There you
My
go.
book is well, let me just show you the cover and see if you can kind of guess what genre it falls into.
Oh no. Oh no.
You know
Do I
how
need to get my
sometimes I read,
earmuffs out for this?
what's that?
Do I need my earmuffs for this?
You might. You know how sometimes I tell you I read books, I'm like, oh my gosh, these books are totally for Brad. I was reading this book and thinking, this book is not for Brad.
Right.
Because Brad doesn't like, scary thriller kind of books, that kind of stuff. That's not his thing. And that's cool because we all have our things. And then we have other things that we don't, aren't necessarily our preferences, right? But as a kid who grew up like loving Stephen King and watching horror movies like on the regular, I love that genre. And I don't think there's enough of it for young people. Books that are written in that style, but that are appropriate for young people. Maybe just scary enough to leave the light on, but not like scary enough for nonstop nightmares, like that kind of thing. So I was so excited when I saw the cover reveal for this book on Instagram. And full disclosure, it's not out yet, but it is going to be out in September. So you can add it to your pre-order list. It'll be very, very soon. You won't have to wait too long. And I remember just like typing on the author's Instagram when I saw it, like, take my money now, because I knew that I needed to have this book. I was very fortunate that an art came my way. And this book is like in some ways, Brad, even though I know you'll never pick it up, there were some aspects of it that I did think that you would think were pretty cool, in the sense that it takes place in like a not so distant future. So there's a few like sort of sci-fi elements, but the kind of sci-fi that you feel like, golly, maybe we're really only a few years away from that really being a reality, like it's not hundreds of years in the future. But it takes place in a not so distant future where climate change has had a ravaging effect on the entire world. But particularly the United States, which is where the story takes place. Things like rampant wildfires across the West and the East Coast. A large portion of the East Coast has actually been completely submerged in water, and they have what's called the New Coast. And that these ravages of climate change have had all sorts of effects on everything from the ability to grow food to like supply chain issues, leaving a lot of people living in poverty, right? And so there's one, however, oasis in the state of Virginia, which is where our main character Jay lives. And that oasis is known as Karloff country. Now, for hardcore horror fans like me, I recognize Karloff as a nod to Boris Karloff, who is the actor who played the original Frankenstein way back in the day. Like, I recognize that. So that's like an Easter egg for somebody like me, right? But what we learn is that Karloff country isn't so much as like an oasis that has escaped the ravages of climate change, but rather is a resort for the uber rich that was started by another billionaire as a place for people who've been able to weather the storms of climate change because they have so much money to go and gather and to experience this sort of like Disneyland frivolity, while the rest of the world sort of, struggles to survive. Jay and his family are very fortunate in so much as they have been hired as employees of Karloff country, the funnest place around. And when the book first starts, Karloff country seems pretty cool in the sense that there's lots of cool technology. They seem to be trying to help people by employing them. They seem to make a great effort to make sure that all of those employees come from really diverse backgrounds from around the world. But as we start to take a closer look, sort of like behind the veneer of all of this sunshine and frivolity, we see that things are not quite Right. And that some of the not only despair, but the anger and rage that lives outside of the walls of Karloff country are starting to leak in to the walls of Karloff country. And things start to happen, like people start to disappear. Some strange things start happening around the park. And it really is kind of up to Jay and his friends to not only figure out what's going on, but also to try to save themselves from a future that's gone totally, totally awry. So I'm not making this sound like horror, but let me just tell you, believe me when I tell you, this book is scary. And I loved it. I loved it so, so much. I couldn't get enough. Lamar Giles is one of my favorite authors. He's one of those authors, I'm sure you have those too, Brad, where they could publish anything and you're going to pre-order it and get, like you just can't wait. And Lamar Giles is one of those for me. So I was really excited to read this and it did not disappoint. It's called The Getaway, a title I didn't even mention before because I was so busy showing this like super scary cover by Lamar Giles. And while you can't read it right now, you can read it, I believe, on September 20th. So add it to your pile, folks. But I'll fair warning, once you start it, you're not going to be able to put it down. It's one of those books. You'll have to read it in one setting.
That's a great book talk, because for a split second you had me wanting to read it until you leveled with us and said, I'm not making this sound very scary yet, but it actually is scary.
It
Because
is.
the plot sounds really good, but I just do not like scary thriller books. And the cover alone, like that's scary enough for me.
Brad will be leaving his
it
nightlight
sounds like
on
a lot
tonight.
of people will love that.
Oh, they will. And I think, like kids 7th, 8th grade and up will totally just dig this book. I think the audience is probably a high school audience, but like in terms of the target audience, but I knew plenty of 7th and 8th graders who would love it. And the other thing I didn't mention, but I think that I should, is that there's a whole undercurrent in this book that I think makes it so rich and layered, which is really about privilege and racism and classism. And when we have a natural disaster, who gets to benefit or who gets to survive and thrive in those, circumstances, and who doesn't. And how money and class and your race play a role in how your particular communities are served, especially in moments when we should be really coming together as a collective to help one another. And I think that makes this book so much more than just here's a scary story about this apocalyptic future. There's a lot of rich discussion points that I think kids with adults could have some really meaningful conversations about.
Very cool. Thanks, Jen, for sharing that. I think that's a nuance from this book that I should also highlight. There's a lot of really cool cultural, even language that was hard for me to pronounce or read, but I could just picture how meaningful it might be to certain kiddos in our school and elsewhere, just to genuinely see and connect and to let their strengths and stories shine and to help the principal or the teacher, whoever is reading it to them. So it really was appealing to me on that front too. So thanks for honing in on that a little bit, or at least in that vein. Yeah. Cool. All right. We've covered the whole gamut from ice cream or Paleteros to thrilling horrors and things like that. So we got you covered. And if you're looking for other books that are somewhere in that continuum from the past several years, you should go to bit.ly/read_this_now, because that's a pretty cool resource.
Yes, lots of books of every category, format, and genre you could think of, because we read widely, and I love hearing about the different books each week, as I know our 3.5 viewers do. So to them, thank you so much for showing up each week. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. Happy reading.